Good morning, everyone. Let's enjoy the sunshine while it lasts. I'd like to call the Audit, Finance and Administration Committee meeting to order. Members of the public are advised that our meetings are webcast live by the City of Hamilton and temporarily archived on the city's website. Other individuals in the media may also be audibly and/or visually recording this meeting. As well, a reminder that all electronic devices are to be switched to a non-audible function during committee meetings. Madam Clerk, are there any changes to the agenda?
Yes, Madam Chair, there's one small change. Item 8.1 will be considered following item 6.1 since the two are linked.
May I please have a motion to approve the agenda as presented, moved by Councillor Vanderbeek, seconded by Councillor Pearson. All those in favor? Carried. Are there any declarations of interest? Seeing none, may I have a motion to approve the April 24, 2017 meeting minutes as presented? Moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Vanderbeek. All those in favor? Carried. There are no delegation requests. We now move on to consent items. May I have a motion to approve items 5.1 and 5.2 and receive items 5.3 to 5.5? Moved by Councillor Vanderbeek, seconded by Councillor Aidan Johnson. All those in favor? Carried. Oh, sorry. Before we carry that, I'd like Councillor Ferguson has a question.
Just trying to catch up here real quick. External audit services. So is the price that you're getting, well, Mike's not here. Rick, is the price you're getting then, it's been the same for a number of years, you're going to redo it for the exact same price. Is that correct?
Through you, Madam Chair. Yes, when we tendered the audit services 5 years ago, it was for a 5-year period, and we asked for a fixed price for the 5 years. And at that time, it was about $65,000 lower than the price we'd been previously paying with Grant Thornton.
Okay, so it did go through a competitive process and it did come in less money. The only other question I have on audit services, 2 years ago, at the request of a citizen, council approved an extra $10,000 to the audit to do an enhanced audit of Hamilton Police Services. And that citizen came forward with about 18 different complaints where he thought there's irregularities, and the auditors confirmed there is no irregularities whatsoever. Do we still want to continue that enhancement, or do you want to take it out now?
Through you, Madam Chair, I personally don't see any benefit to the taxpayers in us continuing that audit. The citizen that we put it in place for reviewed the issues and the findings of that audit, and he felt that they really didn't address his concerns anyway. So it's being done this year, and I would suggest that council may want to decide, and if we come back with a report on the negotiations with for the next 5-year term, we can address that through a recommendation whether council wants to terminate that or not.
So you don't need any motion today then?
We don't need a motion today, no.
But it's about a $10,000 savings? Yeah, well, look, I'd like that to come back because we're not getting value for money on that. So that's all my questions on this one, Madam Chair.
All those in favor? Carried.
Are we finished now with all the consents?
Yes.
Oh, I have another consent question.
Through the chair?
Yeah. Just give me a second. I got to get to my tabs. Very efficient today, Madam Chair. I don't know who to address this question to, so I'll just put it out there, and the right person can answer it. On Appendix A, Item 3, this is Report 5.3, which is the Provincial Offences Act in report. It shows that Hamilton Revenue and other city departments, is other city departments police?
Through the chair, other city departments would be animal licensing, business, or building and licensing, as well as red light.
So where's police then, under Hamilton Revenue?
Through the chair, yes.
Okay, and can you tell me, so we went down from 11 million to 10 million, well, not much, about $400,000 in total revenue. Was that all police, or was that across the board?
Through the chair, unfortunately, I don't have that information at this point in time to be specific on where the reduction was.
Okay, because I'm seeing later on, there's a write-off report for some fines. And of course, we went through all this problem with the action officers, some of the action officers. And so I'm curious to know, since that surfaced, is that why, our police revenues now down, or are they flat, or are they going up? And then secondly, of the write-offs, I'll ask this question later, how much of that is related to police? It'd be nice if you had a third column on police so we could help us better manage that group. And, as chair of the board, I'd like to see that information, have a better understanding of what the performance of the police is like on these POAs. Could that come back as a future consent item, but just breaking that, just that report, that revenue side on the second column of page 3 of Appendix A? Unless you have that information now.
Through the chair, I will be working with our POA group to see if we can extract that information. We are constrained with regards to the ICON system. However, I will be asking the team to take a look into that, and if we can actually extract that information, we will present that back to council.
That'd be great, because I used to get it, the information about what was police and what was other departments. And our previous chief was very proud of the fact that he kept wanting more money in his budget because of all the new revenue he was generating under POA fines. And says, just, I don't get to see that. The city keeps it, I'll turn it back to me. So I'd like to see those trends to help manage those requests, because it's a struggle every year when the police want additional funds to put extra officers on and see the kind of performance that's coming at them. So I would appreciate that, Madam Chairman, if the staff could bring that back to us.
Madam Clerk, do we need to move that?
If there's a motion, it'll end up on the outstanding business list.
Yeah, of course, yes. Councillor, I wish. But I'll bring that back to Mr. Valeri and let him know. But no, and to be quite candid, I've been before this committee on similar situations, and actually will be here in a month's time. It's trying to expedite and get to where we all want to be. And again, they've asked me here for an exemption. And there's actually another building that's going to be coming possibly down or refurbished up there. So it's going to, we're getting there. How can I say it?
I just personally, I can tell you, it's hard for me to go against staff recommendation because it sets a precedent. So there'll be 20 more people lined up behind you wanting the same thing when it only involves $36,000, which is not a lot of money in today's development world. So I don't know what your thoughts are on this. It's about $1,000 a year in interest. Yeah. So it's $5,000 is what we're standing here for.
Through you, Madam Chairman, again, I think it's also the timing of the development. We understand it's still $36,000. It's quite a bit of money in the world of development charges, but it is not unique. Again, I don't want to answer on behalf of your staff. I think it's clearly in the report that this has happened. It will continue to happen unless in the next round of your bylaw you have it open or you increase. Again, 5 years in my world is not a lot of time. So we'd ask some consideration in that we won't come back for 5 years. After that, we'll hopefully be in the ground in the next few years.
But you'll be back. If we do it here, will you be back for 10 more times for 10 different clients?
Sure, I can't answer that. I will be back for one other project that's it's a very important project for the city. Right. It's similar scenarios due to the development process. Again, not blaming anyone. It's just the way it is. So we and the Valerians would be happy if you consider it today, considering all the great things they're doing.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions.
Thank you, Councillor Vanderbeek, and then Councillor Pierce.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So through you to Sergio. Sergio, if frankly, I'm having trouble looking at circumventing rules that have potential to bring on a lot of other requests. But I'm wondering whether a shorter extension would assist, but not 5 years.
Through you, Madam Chairman, we're just trying to follow, again, working with staff, so it's not like we're here without any liaison per se. That is sort of the chronology of years that they break it in. Again, it's to the discretion of the committee, but in our communications and liaison with staff, again, this is common to come back to this committee and request it in 5-year intervals. That's my understanding. Again, it's to the discretion, and we'd appreciate anything that the committee would consider.
So through you, Madam Chair, so it's 5 years you're looking for?
Preferably. Again, we'd like to be in the ground yesterday, but it's just not going to happen. And there's considerable policy issues that we're dealing with up there regarding the province and how the densities are going to work. And it is a engaged community, let's say. So this is going to take a bit of time. And the Councillor Ferguson, through you, Madam Chair, was correct. 36 is not a lot, but we would ask that it be respected again.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman, one last thing, I'm sorry. We did inherit this thing, so in 2012. So I want to stress, if it's not like I'm going to say created it. The credit came along with the property. Again, the end of this year, December of 2017, will be the eve of when they acquired it. Okay, so we're actually proceeding a little earlier because of prior submissions of a previous owner.
Thank you. You knowingly inherited it.
Yeah, we usually inherit everything.
Councillor Pearson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you, Sergio, because you've answered the question. I wanted to make sure. So the demolition was not done by Valerie, correct?
Delaney Management
Correct.
acquired the property. That's my understanding.
Right. So that, and I do recall this file going way back, and there was a number of issues and OMB hearing, et cetera, right?
Correct.
So where are you now within the process now? You're just at pretty well the beginning, correct?
No, there is as you alluded to, there is an OMB decision, but we are now reviewing the whole entire, let's call it mini secondary plan that will incorporate a variety of different type of uses in housing because things are changed, and including some rentals, possibility of some medical, and also, of course, residential that will be somewhat closer to, again, the policy statements of today. We're probably 6 months outside of a submission, and again, I can't control that submission, nor can staff, and that's why we could be back at the board, and then I'm back here. I probably won't be back here, but chances are, we don't control that. So again, not to waste any of the committee's more time, you're right, this is probably costing more time than the value, but we hopefully you consider it for one last time.
Thank you, and I appreciate, because I was just going to ask the next question, is that you could end up in another situation of an OMB hearing, which would then take it into another few years before a shovel actually gets in the ground. Thank you. Thank you for that information.
Thank you.
I'd like to ask staff a question when it's appropriate, Madam Chair. Thank you, Sergio.
Thank you.
Sorry, did you want to ask staff now? We've already asked staff. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you. Then if I could ask, Brian, if in the report it says that the city is responsible for collecting the education DC, so we've already submitted that, because that doesn't get waived or put on hold if we extend this another 5 years.
So through the chair, yeah. So the education DCs will become due when the building permit is actually issued.
Okay, so everything's basically on hold then. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Councillor Vanderbeek, can you take the chair, please? Sergio, specifically, where exactly is this property, through the chair?
The actual lands themselves, or where this actual dwelling was? The dwelling was along the brow. When you come across Scenic Drive, intersects with Sanatorium, and you go around the bend, there was a building that was demolished there.
Okay, yeah.
And there was right along the south side of Sanatorium.
Okay, that's my only question. I'll take the chair back. Are there any further questions? Oh, Councillor Pearson?
Sorry, my apologies. Just one more, and that not in consideration of the report, the request, but if I recall correctly, and maybe through you to staff, they can advise, did we not direct staff some time ago to review the requests that we were getting for waiving or extensions on development charges?
Yeah.
Yeah, we did. I was in the chair.
Yeah, so through the chair, a few years back, we have delegated authority. It's in the report where there's certain situations where the general manager of Finance and Corporate Services, Mike Zagaric, is allowed to do certain things and extend the deadlines. This is not one of those situations.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? May I have a motion to receive the delegation? Moved by Councillor Ferguson, seconded by Councillor Pearson. All those in favor? Carried. Now, thank you, Sergio.
Thank you.
Now, we did make an amendment at the beginning of the meeting to move item 8.1 up. We have already asked staff, but I will ask this again. You've heard Mr. Manchia's delegation. You can sit down.
Okay,
regarding item 8.1. Are there any questions or discussion regarding the staff report? Seeing none, may I have a motion on item 8.1? Councillor Pearson?
Madam Chair, yes, and it's unfortunate, but I'll move the staff recommendation. And the reason I feel that, if I could just speak to it, is that the concern I have is that, Mr. Manager, as he said, it could be another 5 years. So, I mean, even if we extended that, we're going to be back in the same situation. So I think it creates a huge problem as far as paperwork and historical records, et cetera, and precedent going forward. So I will move staff recommendation.
Moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Johnson. Who would like to speak to it?
And indeed, for me, the clinching argument is the argument from precedent. This is not a good precedent. Thank you.
All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Zah. Moving back to 7.1, I now call Lynn Matthews to the podium for her presentation regarding item 7.1.
Through you, Madam Chair. Wendy Mason, Manager of the Provincial Offences Office. Lynn is going to do the presentation. I'm just introducing her to you. She is our collections coordinator of some years and has a lot of experience in the collections of the provincial offences and the challenges that we experience. So I leave you to Lynn.
Thank you, Wendy. Show our first slide here. Okay. We'll start our presentation today by discussing a few of the provincial offences fines facts. Outstanding provincial offences fines totaled $61,853,753 as of December 31st, 2016. Current fines, which are not in default, totaled $9,162,453. And non-current defaulted fines totaled $52,691,300. The total number of the non-current fines in defaulted tickets is 76,371 tickets. Of these 76,000 tickets, 34,595 tickets are what we would consider to be enforceable fines, which means that they can be enforced through a license suspension or license plate denial. 41,776,000 of these tickets are which we would consider unenforceable fines, meaning that we can't apply plate denial or a license suspension to them. We have to enforce them through our own collections or through collection agencies or through civil enforcement. And just some more random facts. Of the 76,371 tickets, 25,447 of them we will deem as uncollectible because they have been issued to what we would consider transient offenders. They would be offenses like drinking in a public place, trespassing, that type of thing. And they're usually people who live on the street and have no means to pay. 2,401 of these tickets have been granted extensions of time to pay, which means they're no longer considered in default and we can't perform collection action on them. And 48,000 tickets are in various stages of collections, either internally or with our external collection agencies. Can you change the, thank you. This is a list of our collection process. These are all the steps we take before we actually finally consider a fine for write-off. So we begin by bringing our new files in from the Ministry of the Attorney General. They send me a new file of overdue fines once a month. We send them to an agency who performs calls on our behalf to try and get a payment out of them. And they have a pre-recorded message, and then they will forward any calls to our office so that we can get a payment out of the client. They do, if we can't locate the people, we perform skip tracing actions, and we do our own internal phone calls. And we check the tax system for ownership because going forward this year, we're looking to try and add some of these fines to the tax roll. And that can only be done if they have a single ownership of the home. We send them a final notice which says you have 10 days to pay or we're going to commence with further action on them. So at this point, we divide our fines into over 5,000 and under 5,000, and this amount was determined by looking at the number of fines and the amount we had in our database at the time. And it is currently under review. We have to review it every few years just to ensure that we're collecting on them efficiently. So at this point, it still remains 5,000. We check their credit rating. We check to see if we can get banking information or loan information, any type of thing, mortgage information on them. We check for property ownership. We file a judgment on them. And we, at that point, determine if it's feasible to go forward with enforcement, civil enforcement, and if it's not, we send them to our first collection agency. If we feel it's feasible to go forward with enforcement action on them, we either begin that action internally. If it's a very large fine or what we would deem to be a difficult to collect fine, like a corporate fine, we forward that over to our legal department for them to look at. So it's only after we do all this that we look at putting a fine to write off. And this process, depending on what we're looking at, we don't look at write-offs for about 7 years. So that's our internal process. You can change it. As you can imagine, we run into several challenges with this. Some of the challenge we face each day with collections is that our offenders continue to drive with suspended licenses and license plate stickers. They just continue to drive, they disregard their fines, they don't pay them, and they continue to drive on the streets. It's more challenging to obtain a payment for an unenforceable fine where there is no plate denial or license suspension. Basically, we just have to try and go after them as much as we can to get them to pay. Privacy protection legislation has created a big barricade into locating people and contacting them. Just to give you an example of that, when I first started doing this 16 years ago, if somebody gave us an NSF check, I could call the bank and say, hi, do you have money in this guy's account today? We're going to certify the check. Now they don't even admit that the person has an account at their bank. So that's just one of the obstacles is the Privacy Acts. A small percentage of our personal offenders in Hamilton own property. And the people that do seem to own property and are responsible tend to pay their fines, where the people who do not pay their fines. A high number of our offenders are on social assistance. It's not unusual for us to get a call from someone saying that they are on ODSP or something like that, and they feel that we should take special consideration that they maybe should not have to pay that fine because of that. And what we try to do in that case is to negotiate just a very small payment every month from them, something that they can afford to pay. Many of our tickets do not have dates of birth, and this is crucial for us to proceed with civil enforcement. We have to be able to confirm a person's identity before we put a lien on their home or add the fine to their tax roll. And we have quite a few, red light cameras being one of them, where we don't have those date of births to 100% confirm the person. We've had a few issues where we've run into like a senior and a junior living in the same house, and we have to be able to confirm which one of those people has the ticket. Extensions of time to pay and appeals are granted at the discretion of the justices of the peace. We don't have any say with them. So if we have an offender who owes us a large portion of money and they've had several extensions and we think you really shouldn't give these people any more time to pay, we don't have any say with them with that. They may just give them another payment plan and then the people default on the payment plan again. And finally, provincial legislation does limit our abilities. For example, people who have a fine, if we wanted to add it to the tax roll, that's only if that for the person who has the fine is the only name on the home. If it's owned jointly, we can't add it to the tax roll. And they also have the ability to basically apply for endless extensions on them. If they wish to apply for an extension 10 times, they're allowed to do that legally. And they're also allowed to appeal a ticket at any time. We're ready for the next one. So going forward, how are we going to deal with this? MAG and MTO is implementing the expanded plate denial. They just began enforcing that on May the 1st of this year, which will make these suspended drivers a little bit more visible to the police department because now they won't be able to get their license sticker unless the fines are paid. We have begun again this year reporting fines to people's credit bureau reports. That was a tool we had about 15 years ago, and there were some issues with it, so it was taken away from us for quite a long time, and we finally be able to renegotiate with TransUnion and Equifax that we can put these outstanding fines onto their credit rating, and come the time that they come to apply for a mortgage, or suddenly they're getting in touch with us because they want this cleared up. So that, we find that to be a very effective tool. We're looking forward to tax rolling of fines for vendors who do own a property singly in the municipality. We are reviewing the minimum thresholds, as I spoke about earlier, in our process. I belong to the OMTRA POA Collections Committee, and we meet once a year to discuss various tools and changes, and one of the things we're looking at this point is adding additional fees for what we would consider to be our services. We would consider it to be a service to let a person apply for an extension. So we're looking to see if we can add a fee onto the fine to do that. These, of course, all have to be approved by the Ministry of the Attorney General before we can do it. So that's one of the things we're looking at, is any additional fees. If we have to forward your file to a collection agency, we want to charge you a fee for doing that, because that's extra administration on our part. And finally, we have ongoing requests to the Ministry of the Attorney General to make changes to legislation to help enhance our collection abilities. That's also an ongoing thing we have with them through the OMTRA committee and also through Wendy's committee, the MCMA. So in summary, the Provincial Offences Collection staff is conscientious in overcoming these challenges, and we try to maximize collections in the most cost-efficient manner. New and innovative methods to collect are always being sought, and we work with other POA sites in Ontario to share ideas and successful tools. The POA collection people are exceptional, I have to say, at meeting, and you know, if we discover something that's going to work for us to collect, we share it with everyone, and that's wonderful. And it's only after 7 years of diligent efforts by both our internal staff and our collection agencies that the unenforceable fines are considered for write-off. We do not write off any fines where we can suspend a driver's license or their license plate. So that concludes our presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and we do have some questions. Councillor Ferguson.
Hi, can you go back to your first slide?
Sure. The arrow back. There you go.
Okay,
Okay.
I'm trying to connect the dots between what I'm seeing. You're asking us to write off $704,000 in fines. But when I go to that list, it seems the ones you have to write off, the $3,166,000 are uncollectible as they're transient offenders. How do you get, can you explain to me how you get the $704,173 out of what we're seeing up there?
Okay, so what you're seeing on the slide is the overall amounts outstanding in collections. When we consider a write-off, we go back 7 years and we look to 1 year at a time to do the write-offs. So the write-offs we're looking at now, I believe, are 2009. So we're looking at anything we've been
This is just for 2009, it's not for the whole 7 years like we're...
The 700,000 that you're discussing? Yes.
From April 1st, 2016 to March 31st, that's 28,000. But it talks about an 8-year period of where you put the 704,000, but we're only writing off 1 year today.
That's 1 year, and that year is...
Through the chair, folks?
2000, through the chair. That is from the year 2009.
Are most of that the some fines that are transient offenders? Most of that write-off?
Yes, I believe they are.
Because parking fines, you're going to have a license number, you can prevent a plate from being renewed and collected.
Through the chair, we don't deal with the parking offenses. That's the parking department. Our plate denials would come from red light camera tickets. And we do not write those off.
What about police POAs? Are they part of this?
Through the chair, yes, that would include police tickets that we deem to be uncollectible.
Okay. Because if you take the 3,166, that's over 7 years, that's 15,000 tickets that are being written off. If you assume $200 as an average ticket for drinking in public or loitering or, you know, I don't know whether it's higher or lower than that, but it's $200 is probably, that's a lot of tickets we're writing off. And so are we wasting our time writing tickets to transit?
Through the chair, Councillor.
Are we wasting our time? Do you want me to look at you? Not look at me? Oh, okay. Are we wasting our time issuing those tickets to transient?
Through the chair, I'm sorry, I can't answer that. I get that would be a police. determination.
Okay.
Through the chair, if I can just sort of jump in on that question, what we are doing with regards to the POA, I've just actually had the privilege of overseeing the PO office about a month and a bit ago. So we are looking at doing a review, specifically with our tickets, our trends. So I would say it's a great question, and we are going to be looking at exactly what our trends have been over the last few years, given the variety of tickets. That will give us insight on any recommendations that we would like to put forward to our internal customers.
Thank you. Through the chair, is that dropped off significantly since the arrest of those 4 action officers who were allegedly writing false tickets? Has that dropped dramatically the number of transient tickets we're writing?
Through the chair, I don't have that information. We don't have that level of detail at this point in time.
Okay. I suspect that would be a question you would anticipate because of what's been going on in this trial. I'm just trying to get my head around this, and that's 15,000 tickets is an awful lot of tickets that at the $3 million that we can't collect.
Through the chair, I will say in looking at the data, it's fairly consistent year over year with regards to the number of transient tickets. So I would say from a spike perspective, I haven't seen any looking at the high-level data, but once again, allow the POA team to take a look at the data in a little bit more detail and assess the trends given the various tickets that the POA office collects.
Okay. I mean, I'll take that up with the chief also, whether we're wasting our time writing these tickets if we just deem them uncollectible, because they don't have any fixed address and they're marginalized people who are out there in the public. But it's interesting. That's a lot of money, $3 million, and that's a lot of tickets, too, that officers taking the time to write up. So I think that's all the questions I have at this time.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? Councillor Vanderbeek, can you take the chair, please? Through the chair, can you just give me an idea of the scope of the type of tickets that are being issued? Please.
Through you, Madam Chair. Anything under the Provincial Offences Act is what this office administers to. So it can be driving offences under the Highway Traffic Act, it can be trespassing, it can be city bylaws non-parking. So littering, snow removal, building code act charges, charges under the Ministry of the Environment, Ministry of Natural Resources. So there's animal control. There's a wide variety of charges.
Through the chair, can you be more specific? I'm just trying to think. The provincial offenses, driving offenses, for example, or some of the other environmental offenses. A little bit more specific, please, through the chair.
Through you, Madam Chair. So driving, anything from careless driving down to an improper left-hand turn. Speeding's, of course, one of our biggest violations that we administer to. Environmental charges would be an example where there's a spill into the water, and the Ministry of the Environment investigates and lay charges. Often they're against a corporation. So it could be, I'm sorry? That's true, yes.
Sorry, what was that?
Not picking up after your pet in a,
Okay.
it's a city bylaw.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Those are my questions. I'll take the chair back. Are there any further questions? Oh, Councillor?
Do our outside agencies, Madam Chairman, use robocalls as a way of collection? I've noticed that my wife, it was alleged that she owed $158 to Rogers. I knew we never had a Rogers account, so I just ignored them. But they call every friggin' day. And so do we use that kind of collection system also?
Through you, Madam Chair, we do our initial call for the new files with an automated service.
Was it a real person or a computer?
It's through a computerized phoning system, and that system forwards them to our office to answer any inquiries that they have.
Okay, so you only call once then?
Initially, yes. Now, our collection agencies, I believe they use people. I don't believe they use automated callers.
Okay, because it's
So that's a
interesting.
person.
Rogers, they would call every day to the point where I finally, I don't care what we owe, here's my credit card, pay it. And they says, well, no, you're not her. You got to go take your power of attorney to Rogers store, have it confirmed that you could speak for them before you could pay it. But I want to make sure we're not harassing our citizens the same way. You know, if they want to pay it, just let them pay it. And okay, I'm hearing that you don't use that on a regular basis, the robocalls.
Through you, Madam Chair, we only use them at the first of the month, just as an initial contact with the client.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, councillors. Now, may I have a motion to receive the staff presentation moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Vanderbeek? All those in favor? Carried. May I have a motion regarding the staff report moved by Councillor Aidan Johnson, seconded by Councillor Vanderbeek? All those in favor? Carried. We're moving on to item 8.2, sorry?
I want to confirm that, Brian, that this write-off does not affect the levy because it's a cash-based system.
Through the
We
chair.
only count the money once it's in the bank.
Through the chair, you're correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to 8.2, centralization of city internal support staff, support services. Are there any questions or discussion regarding item 8.2? Councillor Pearson.
Just one, Madam Chair, and just please clarify to me, Phase 1 of the centralization internal support services is covering communications, design, and finance and administration. Can you explain design?
Chris?
If I can, through you, Madam Chair, design is graphics.
Are there any further questions? Seeing none, may I have sorry, Councillor Ferguson.
You know, this is pretty heavy-duty stuff. It looks like it's a pretty major change, but I don't understand it. This is simply to centralize it in order to have control from top to bottom, and it sort of disconnects the general managers and from their finance staff. Is that the intent?
Through you, Madam Chair, that's the basic intent. I mean, as pointed out, this will not generate a cost. I think page 4 of 6 and 5 of 6 outlines the advantages, better control over the services being delivered. I would expect that we'll be able to cut down on outside consultant costs that we incur, certainly as it relates to communications and design. Just better oversight of the services we deliver.
Okay, well, I have the deepest trust in our general manager, so if he thinks it's right, I'm okay with that. Thank you. Thank
you. May I have a motion on item 8.2? Councillor Johnson moves the recommendation, seconded by Councillor Pearson. All those in favor? Carried. Moving on to 8.3, I believe, Charles, do you have are you going to speak to 8.3?
Through the chair, I can provide an introductory overview.
If that's possible, yes.
So this is a performance audit. It was on our audit plan for this year. It's been completed. We have 13 recommendations that management responded to. Management agreed to all the recommendations and gave us their action plan on a very timely basis. A lot of the issues are somewhat technical and financial accounting oriented. But I think perhaps if I just give 3 main takeaways from the report, if that's helpful. One is we suggested improvements toward better stewardship and efficiency. For example, having fewer reserves, so that reduces administrative cost. We recommended conducting periodic reviews and making some amendments to the umbrella policy over reserves to improve oversight. The second area was the need for an overall strategy for reserves that are supported by targets. And this will help in the issue of assessing on an ongoing basis the sufficiency of reserves, which is currently very challenging. Although we are comparable to other municipalities and favorably comparable, it still needs some analysis and targets to be able to more effectively monitor sufficiency. And the third area that we identified was transparency and how that could be improved and how understanding, particularly to users, could be improved. So one area, for example, is the loans that are payable and repayable as between reserves, and then some issues with being better able to tie in the reserve report to financial statements and the variance report.
Are there any questions? Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And through you, in my brush at this, it looks like a good news report. And we're the second highest in reserves in the comparative municipalities. And if you look on a per capita basis, we're in pretty good shape. Most of them are in the $500 dollars per capita, and we're at $1,269,000. Calgary's only one above us, and they were oil rich for a number of years, and we're able to put away some decent reserves. I suspect they're eating through that now. So am I interpreting this properly through you, Charles, that we're in good shape with our reserves?
I don't, through the chair, I don't think there's cause for concern here, but I think we can improve our strategies and our transparency.
But with the amount of money we have in reserves, we should be high-fiving, shouldn't we? Just by comparison to our other municipalities.
That's correct.
Okay. I think, you have some pretty good reserves there in tax stabilization and the claim fluctuation reserve for health and dental policy, but particularly tax stabilization. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
Are there any further questions? Brian?
Yeah, so through the chair, yeah, we worked collaboratively, obviously, with Charles and his team on this report and the findings. And when you talk about reserves per capita, that's just one of the measures. There's other measures where we go through a study with BMA Consulting, us and a number of other municipalities, and they look at our reserves as a percentage of our own source revenues. And in some of those cases, we've been trending down in the last 5 years, where some of the other municipalities on average are trending up. So there's a lot of different metrics that you need to look at as far as the reserve position. We don't, it's not that we don't disagree with some of the things. We do have reserve strategies around our vehicles and equipment, right? We use reserves for vehicles and equipment as opposed to our capital budget and our capital levy for vehicles. So there are a number of strategies that are in place right now with our reserves. We look forward to doing this work over the next few years to increase the accountability and reporting of reserves.
I don't know whether that's conservative accounting or whether that's, hey, don't take any of this money, because even as a percentage of the operating expenditures, we're in very good shape too, sitting up at 42%. Most of our competitors are under 20%. And so I think it's a good news story. And I'd like to congratulate you on having us. I'd rather have it this way than the other way. And so I think it's a good news story, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any further questions? Seeing that, would you move to recommend to just to receive? No, we need a motion. So to approve the recommendations then? Moved by Councillor Ferguson, seconded by Councillor Pearson. All those in favor? Carried. There are no motions. Are there any notices of motion? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 12. If committee does not need to discuss the private and confidential minutes of April 24th, 2017 meeting, may I have a motion to approve the minutes and direct that they remain private and confidential and restricted from public disclosure? Moved by Councillor Ferguson, seconded by Councillor Vanderbeek. All those in favor? May I have a motion to adjourn? Oh, sorry, Councillor Pearson has a question.
My apologies, just flipping through. I just want to ask a question, if I could, through you, Madam Chair. With regards to sale of lands, and I don't know if someone's here from tax. Is anyone here that could help me? Well, we have our City of Hamilton sale of lands for tax arrears advertised. And I'm sure with the value of properties now increasing and the market being great out there, I know we list what our minimum tender is, but do we get a report that says how much more it goes over? And where does that money go? So I'm looking at the most recent one, May 30th. It had, say, 240 Cope Street, had a minimum tender amount of $17,792.55, an assessed value of $158. I'm sure we probably make more than that, considering the market right now. And I can put it forward as for a future report back, if I could, Madam Chair.
Through you, Madam Chair, we'll do that.
I'd appreciate it, because I'd be curious now with the markets going up and where the money goes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. May I have a motion to adjourn? Moved by Councillor Ferguson, seconded by Councillor Vanderbeek. All those in favor? Carried.